So we're actually live now and ready to start away. So with Mike now joined in, I'm happy to welcome everyone to the 44th Content Marketing Webinar. Wow, I'm getting old, Mike, huh? 44th. Whoa, that's a big number. But we're very excited to have you on the webinar today to talk a little bit about Inbound 13. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks a ton for having me. This is exciting. We're coming off a really exciting week.
Can't wait to drill some super challenging questions at you about the show.
Oh boy, you told me they were going to be easy questions.
All right. Most of them are pretty easy, but with grace and dignity, you'll answer them as if they were easy. So, but I don't really have much of a deck here, but just a couple of fun things that I put together to sort of field a couple questions. I mean, there's just so much data to talk about. First of all, you just unbelievable show with regards to the size. You must be completely blown away. 5,300 people. Wow.
Yeah, I think we had 2,800 last year, 1,100 the year before, and we certainly thought it would grow off of last year, but nothing like what we ended up experiencing this year. And I think it's really just a testament to how many marketers are sort of embracing the concepts of inbound marketing, and just how many people are sort of seeing the light, so to speak, that these are the things that you need to be embracing and just wanting to learn more about it. And it's just really the energy of sort of that inbound marketing community. So it definitely was a lot of fun and very energizing and great to see so many people turn out.
Was it as daunting for you as it was for me to see even the setup at the Heinz and you sort of had some input and vision on as to how this was going to go. But I mean, when I saw the stage setup, for example, the monitors, I look at where you were a year or two ago, and it's like, wow, it's just, you must have been, at least yourself, a bit humbled by the turnout and by all the investment of time and energy you put into the show.
Oh, completely. I'm on the one hand, I'm so proud of what the team was able to do in terms of organizing the event and putting it all together. And then, you're absolutely right. It's a very humbling experience that this many people want to show up and talk about marketing and talk about how to think about inbound and content and context and all these different things. And it just the size and the scale of it, I think, is something, like you're saying, you really can't understand it until you're actually there in person. Even helping to plan the event, I don't think, even from my perspective, you really understand the real scale of it until you're actually there physically. And a lot of attendees sort of said similar things, and it just, once you're there, you just sort of, you're just kind of awed by the scale of everything, and it's a great thing to be part of.
Indeed. From a sponsor's perspective, Mike, we were, of course, a sponsor. You can see the visual there on our WriterAccess cappuccino, espresso coffee stand, which got rave reviews. We were able to really enjoy that. But what was interesting to us is the conversations going on. We were sponsored SCS and AdTech and PubCon and, on and on and on over with WriterAccess over the years and Idea Launch. But we were having literally on-board conversations about specific writers that might be appropriate for customers, or inbound marketing and how are we different. I mean, it was a very intellectual crowd. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, I feel like the crowd is extremely engaged and really wants to learn how they can improve their marketing. And maybe there's some folks that I think are sort of still transitioning from more traditional to more inbound, and then there's a lot of folks who are doing inbound and want to do more of it and do it better. And I absolutely think that you're really spot on with that. This is, in terms of people attending a conference, the most engaged and sort of just really they want to learn. I remember talking to a woman on the last day, and she grabbed me and she said, thanks for your session, it was great. And she showed me her legal pad, and the entire thing was full of notes except the last 4 pages were blank. And she told me, she's like, this is a brand new legal pad when I started the conference 2 days ago. And they literally, I mean, people just, they're very, very active. They want to dive into all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so great to have so many, partners involved like yourself that have answers for people, that have ideas for people, that just want to have these conversations. And I think you're right. This is sort of the ground zero for the inbound marketing movement. So when you talk about content and publishing more content, who else do you want to talk to besides the people that have already sort of drunk the Kool-Aid and are part of the movement? They're a lot more fun and energizing to talk to than the people that are still buying a lot of advertising and are maybe showing up at some of those other events that you mentioned. So yeah, I love the folks that show up for this, because I feel like I'm among my people, and it's people like you and I that just buy into this stuff, and we want to talk to each other about it and figure out how we can do it better.
All-star, and should I say rock-star keynotes, Mike. Just unbelievable, riveting. I have rare to go to a conference, honestly, that has such great content focused on the inbound marketing topic. I put together just some quick notes that I'll read off to you. Are you online by looking at this, by the way? Are you on a phone?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
No, I'm here, yeah.
Yeah, so actually HubSpot on SlideShare has a great little summary of some of the keynotes. I just actually found it right before the presentation, so we'll just blow through these quickly, and then we'll both talk a little bit about some of the keynotes, because they were riveting. But Seth Godin, I mean, come on, he's really probably one of my personal favorite heroes when it comes to understanding who we are in the business world and why we exist. But some of the takes from his keynote, this is a great one, be genuine, be remarkable. I mean, remarkable is the word actually that you use quite a bit. If I could just ask you a question there. I remember seeing some of the taglines, and you guys really picked up on that nicely. Be remarkable. Can you comment on that a little bit in Seth Godin's presentation?
Well, I think the fundamental sort of point behind that remarkable word, or the remarkability, is that's how you stand out, right? So if you're not doing something that's remarkable, if you don't have content that's remarkable, it's really hard for you to stand out. And those are the things that gets noticed. Those are the things that get shared in this day and age, and that's really sort of the core behind what makes all of this stuff work. So, yeah, we've been huge fans of Seth for a long time, and we had him come and speak at an event a long time ago, years ago. We were psyched to have him come back. He's great, and he had a lot of new content this time, and I think it was a good way to sort of inspire people that they're doing the right things and they need to do more of it, and that was sort of, I think, the key message behind Seth.
Mm-hmm. Another great take. Don't strive to be heard when you're here. Work to be missed when you're gone. I mean, that's hard to do, right? But it's worth aiming for, probably. That's something that I think was powerful. Another great one from his line: if you say failure is not an option, you are also saying success is not an option. In other words, his classic, take a risk, take a chance, be bold, be the purple cow out there in the pasture. Really, really great stuff. And he sort of tied it in nicely with Inbound. He literally, one of his slides, the next chapter of Inbound is a whole new way of walking through the world. I thought that was kind of interesting. What was your take on, this concept of Seth Godin actually saying the words inbound and inbound marketing? I think it's, is he serving the Kool-Aid now? What do you think?
I think it's. I always felt like Seth was, in many ways, one of the godfathers of inbound marketing. If you trace back, he wrote the book Permission Marketing back in 1999.
Right.
And I think that's sort of one of the works that, along with New Rules of Marketing and PR and the Clue Chain Manifesto, and I think all of those things are sort of things that were either the early part of or precursors to sort of this inbound movement. And it's, I don't know if he's serving more of the Kool-Aid or he's actually mixing it and making it himself, or how to describe it. But it's great to have someone of that stature buy into this stuff. But it makes sense, because, to be honest, I think all the principles of inbound are completely related to and draw upon the things that he's been talking to people about for over a decade.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Arianna Huffington, wow, was she awesome or what? I mean,
I think for a lot of people she was a little bit of the big surprise. Mm-hmm. I think that people thought she would be interesting to hear from, but she was, I think, funnier than people expected. Mm-hmm. I think that she was more motivational and sort of more interesting than a lot of people expected, and the early feedback that I'm seeing is that she was definitely the top or tied for the top keynote of the conference.
Interesting. And I'd love to hear how you're gauging that. Were you guys measuring and monitor chatter? I mean, of course you were. I'm looking back at this slide on the right here. You had this sort of Inbound 13 leaderboard of all the people that had made the most posts. That was kind of interesting, by the way. But back to Ariana, what was how were you gauging the success of the keynotes? Were you looking?
So yeah, certainly there was a lot of conversation about them, and the number of tweets per keynotes and things like that. But what I was specifically talking about was the feedback survey from the event.
Nice.
And she and Seth, because we actually asked people what was your favorite keynote. So don't tell us how good everyone individually was. We had other questions about things like that. But which keynote was your favorite? And Ariana and Seth, the final results are not in yet, but they've been both sort of trading off between 1 and 2 votes ahead of each other in all the early results there. So I think those were both sort of some of the sessions that people really, really just loved and were sort of inspired by. And I think that Seth has been doing it for a long time, and I think Ariana, certainly she's very famous and is a very, very accomplished businesswoman. But I think for this audience, she was a little bit new, and people loved her. The reviews there were unbelievable.
She questioned, our business ethic and our business attitude, and putting, for example, she does not allow cell phones at the meals with her family, and this fast-paced, busy environment is troublesome for her, and at the same time, there's this intention that startups, HubSpot is certainly not a startup, but can relate to startups like WriterAccess, and really he does kind of operate like a startup from what we heard from Brian Darmesh. But she really brought us back into reality, don't you think? And that was probably a breath of fresh air for a lot of people to hear.
Well, and I think that the interesting thing about what she was saying and sort of the applicability of it to marketers is that for creativity and for leadership, you can't be 100% go all the time. Like, you need time to sort of put things into perspective. You need time to recharge, because you're not a good leader if you're making decisions when you're super tired about things and interacting with people when you're tired, because when we're tired, we all are maybe a little bit grumpier or more difficult to deal with, or things like that. And then the same thing goes for the creative side of things too. So when you think about when are you going to write a blog post or things like that, it's really hard to spend 20 minutes here and 20 minutes later during the day and kind of turn that into an effective blog post or another piece of content. I think a lot of what she was saying for marketers was you got to find some time to recharge and unplug, and that will help you actually do better work. So sometimes maybe it's not about the volume of the work that you're doing, the number of things you're checking off your list, but are you really doing the things that will get you to where you want to go?
Mm-hmm. So Nate Silver, I didn't hear this actual presentation, but maybe you could talk a little bit about it. Here's a couple of the slides that I'm sure you're aware of on the HubSpot SlideShare. But tune us into what your thoughts were on that. Nate had some. Cool.
Yeah, Nate's super smart, and he's the guy from 538.com. So he does a lot of data analytics, right? And he predicted the last 2 elections extremely accurately based on a data model that he produced. He also does a lot of things with baseball and other sports types things as well. And he actually just moved from the New York Times to ESPN as part of that. And he had a really interesting perspective on big data and sort of how many problems will big data actually solve, and what are some of the things you need to be careful of when you're thinking about data and analyzing things. So if we had other sessions that were maybe a lot more kind of right brain, he was kind of left brain, which I think was interesting. And this particular quote about the sort of the gap widening between what we know and what we think we know, because his point there was because we have more and more and more data, we think we know more and more, but the amount that we actually know is not increasing as fast as the amount of data that we have. So it's sort of like we think we know more and more, and we certainly know some more things, but the gap between those two is widening, which is kind of an interesting concept to think about.
Particularly with content analytics and analytics just coming at us from every angle. It's nice to step back and say, is this relevant? Is it helping me produce great content? Those are the things we all have to really start worrying about, I think, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that sometimes people, there's lots of warning signs there, right? So if you've written a certain number of blog articles or, published a certain number of blog articles, and you're looking at the analytics and you say, oh, well, these are the 4 or 5 that perform the best. That's true, but it's out of those sets of articles, and maybe there's other content out there that actually perform even better, content that you don't even have data on, or there's lots of things that you need to think about, and you're right. Sometimes the answer isn't completely in the analytics. Maybe there's some other insight. Maybe the market has changed. Maybe there's some other insight you could gain from your customers that would lead you down the path of some other types of content that would maybe perform better. Things like that, I think, are definitely things that you need to sort of keep in mind.
Scott Harris, I don't know about you, but like Brian, I was just in tears for his presentation. I mean, what a story, what a brand, what a remarkable individual. I hope he moves out of his one-bedroom apartment in New York and upgrades. But other than that, you know, what was your take on? First of all, how did it come about that you even connected with Charity Water and his whole organization?
Yeah, it's a couple of us at a couple conferences had seen Scott speak. Brian had seen him speak, and somebody else from my team had seen him speak at a conference, and sort of came back from that and said, wow, you know, these guys are doing some very, very noble work around the world, and their organization is living up to those inbound principles of being very transparent, being very accountable, trying to do marketing and outreach in a new way and make it more effective and less interruptive. And, you know, that really just got us interested. And so we reached out to them. We started to talk a little bit. And then this whole sort of partnership came together where they launched their September campaign, which is their big annual campaign that they do actually at the conference. And you're absolutely right. I think that their story is amazing, and the way that they bring that story to the whole world is just very, very inbound. And it's the fourth time that I've seen that presentation, and I will say that I do cry less over time because you're sort of prepared for that moment, so you put up your own barriers, but it absolutely does bring tears to my eyes. I think for different people there's different parts, but the story about the girl who did a campaign and I forget how much money she raised, but she didn't raise as much money as she would have hoped, and she sort of mailed in the money and then told her parents that she would try harder next year, and then she, you know, tragically died in a car accident. And that ended up sort of spurring all the sort of public support and help, and ended up resulting in millions of dollars. Now there's, you know, her name's Rachel. There's Rachel's Wells all over the world that are bringing clean drinking water. People, that's just, for me, you know, that's the most emotional part of the story for me. I think different parts hit different people differently, but it's a very, very emotional story, and something that makes you feel good that there are, you know, some good things going on in the world, and it gives you a way that you can actually help too.
It also intertwines all that we believe in with regards to even what Seth was talking about and Ariana. I mean, it's setting up the business the right way. So every dollar you contribute, you can actually track to a particular geographic location of a truck that's drilling a well in a city. You know, that's just a remarkable thing. You know, bringing in the GPS system to the business model combined. Yeah. Wasn't that amazing?
It's amazing, and they do that if you give $1 or you give $1 million. Like, that's the thing. It's just this whole notion of, you know, we want your support, and we figured out ways to make that scalable with technology, and we want it, you know, we want it to be super accountable. And it's those types of things that I think they're really in many ways transforming the nonprofit business model, and that's something that we just loved, and we thought that there was a really great duality to the story, both the work that they're doing and hopefully motivating people at the conference to actually be part of it and support it and start their own campaigns, but also how they're doing the work. And I think it's an interesting sort of transformative business model story within the nonprofit industry.
Indeed. So any favorites from yourself, or any takeaways?
Oh, boy. You know,
what touched your soul?
What touched my soul is always the charity water stuff, right? I think my vote for most entertaining probably goes to Ariana. I think most motivational probably goes to Seth. And what appealed most to me, to the quant in me, was certainly Nate. I don't know. I think Seth did a great job at kicking off the event as a whole, but, you know, to me, I think that they were just a great group.
Right on. So I was interested in learning about, you know, the topic selection for the show. I mean, we're going to get more into some questions about, you know, the show itself and launching the show and all kinds of fun stuff. But I had somebody in my office go through all the sessions and try to kind of categorize them a little bit. And interestingly enough, there were a lot of sessions on selling and how to put inbound marketing to work, which I thought was really interesting and really cool, actually. And then, of course, industry-specific, whether it be talking about agencies or nonprofit organizations, and that was an interesting draw. Design, naturally, I'm sure a big pain point for a lot of the customers. Optimization, you know, sort of interesting. Content creation, my ballpark, not as many presentations on that. I thought was interesting, and of course customers, and then only a few on HubSpot products. Very interesting. This show was not littered with HubSpot products. Certainly there was a lot of attention to products, and we'll talk about that. In many ways, that was probably the purpose of the show. We'll talk about that later. But tell us a little bit about the topic selection and your team that put that together.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the topic selection is driven by a couple things. What we feel like the market and the community is most interested in hearing, and the feedback that we got from the prior year on different sessions, and where we sort of feel like things are going. And there were a few things happening. One is we're hearing more and more from marketers that are starting to do a decent job of inbound marketing, that they're running into additional challenges with their sales team who hasn't adapted how they're selling to the new inbound leads that they're generating through the content and other things that they're doing. So we wanted to really help those marketers by adding, we definitely had more sessions on selling this year than last year. It's definitely a minority of the overall. I think there were about 140 different sessions this year, so it's definitely a minority, but definitely a lot more than the prior year. I think we'll probably talk about this in a minute, but we also launched a new, free product for salespeople, and that was certainly part of it as well. But I think a lot of the marketers are looking for ways to help them better interact with their sales team, so a lot of sessions on sales and marketing alignment and things like that. And then in a lot of the other areas, there were some very popular sessions around, one of the most popular sessions that we had to run encore versions of it twice, where it was something like how to create sexy content within a boring industry. And that was one where people were just fascinated by it. And there's a guy from AmeriFirst Mortgages named Dan Moyle who has done some great content within his industry, and I think all of us, to varying degrees, feel like we're in a boring industry. So yeah, a lot about content, a lot about different sessions, things like that. But we look at how full the different sessions were each year and what the feedback is through all the surveys that we get, and that sort of drives a lot of the agenda for the future years.
Awesome. Very good summary. So I was wondering, how successful was Inbound 13? And more interestingly, how do you measure success? I did a search this morning for Inbound 13 recap and found 9,700 results, right?
Wow.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
How are you measuring the success?
Yeah, I think you measure the success in a few ways. One is just the volume of conversation about the event, and we were over 60,000 tweets for the 3 days of the event, which is just phenomenal. It was one of the top trending topics on Twitter every single day. So that certainly tells you that there was sort of a lot of buzz and a lot of conversation around the event. But then, to be honest, the biggest thing that we look at is customer satisfaction. And so that survey that we have out now, one of the, there's lots of different questions that we ask to try to really gauge what people are saying, but one of them is, if you're familiar with Net Promoter Score, is a Net Promoter Score benchmark of the conference. And so basically we ask people, how likely are they to recommend the conference to one of their colleagues, and I was shocked, happy, really ecstatic that the Net Promoter Score is, at least right now, preliminarily, I think there's some new surveys coming in today, but with more than 200 responses, is 66. And so 75% of the people said on a scale of 0 to 10 that a 9 or a 10 that they're likely to recommend the conference to a friend. So it's like, under the Net Promoter Score math, that means 75% of the people at the event were promoters, and I've just never seen numbers like that. So I think that bodes really well for next year and sort of the growth in the community. So it's something that we're definitely very, very excited about.
Good stuff. Rick Burns had really a great presentation on sort of infusing and introducing product marketing into the inbound marketing flow. It's a great deck. I highly recommend everybody download that. But, do you feel the show sort of helped educate attendees on the HubSpot product specifically without getting in their face or And this is an interesting slide that they conducted in 2011, back when you guys were really all about educating people on inbound marketing, and almost, not even introducing the product till someone signs up for like a test drive or something. So it's a cool slide. But do you think the show did a good job of educating people on HubSpot, or maybe the attendees of the show already are users of the HubSpot product, so the show wasn't as much about introducing the product? But can you talk about that?
It's a good question. So I think about 40% of the people at the event are HubSpot customers. About 20%, maybe 25% are, partners, agency partners, things like that. And so that leaves, kind of like 35% that are neither of those things. And so it's definitely a pretty mixed crowd. And what I think is interesting is that I think the event does do a pretty good job of getting people who are ready to have more conversations and learn more about the HubSpot product without necessarily trying to get into everyone's face about it, right? So there's certainly a bunch of sessions, and there's a track or two that are test drives of HubSpot products and things like that. But there's lots of other things you can do, and you can go see some others. You can go see Mitch Joel speak at the same time, and he's not going to sit there and talk about our product, right? So there's a whole sort of mix of content there. But I do think it does a good job, and I think that to be honest, in this day and age, and this is the type of stuff you guys preach as well, the best way to get someone to want to interact with you and learn more about your product is to have some really interesting content and teach them a bunch of things and become that trusted advisor. And I think that's a lot of what the event was about. If the event was all about our product, I think we would have had 500 people, not 5,000, and it would have been a very, very different event. And you're right. I think what we've learned over time is that completely excluding your product content from everything that you do is will help you attract people to yourself, but it's going to be very difficult to sell anything. But if you do the opposite, that's going to be really hard to attract anyone to you. So you sort of need to find the balance between those two things, and I think we struck the balance relatively well at the conference.
Indeed. So tell us a little bit about the launch of the show. I mean, I can only imagine how many hours went into planning this show. But once again, Rick Burns sort of talked a little bit about that and how product launches are infused even in the launch of Inbound 13. And assigning different tasks to people. I mean, my gosh, it was just a monstrous task. But how long did what was the strategy? How long did the launch take? How many people were involved? How did you orchestrate it all? I mean, phenomenal effort.
Yeah, I'm glad it looks that way from the outside because it feels like total chaos on the inside, right? So essentially almost the entire marketing team was involved in one way or another. Probably if you look at the core team of people who did a lot of work on it, probably at least a dozen people. And a lot of it is one of those things where it sort of comes together increasingly over time. So early on, probably 6 months out from the event, there's a small team that are actually working on the event and the logistics and the speaker lineup and the sessions and things like that. And then as we get closer, then the product stuff gets infused, the promotional campaigns for the product launches gets infused a little bit more. And it's a lot of things. I mean, this is a screenshot of a Google spreadsheet where we tried, and this is actually for the couple days of the event, who exactly is publishing what when, right? So we have in here blog articles going out, ebooks going out, we have email promotion going out, we have, I think there's a couple of videos in there launching, there's, when certain keynote presentations are happening, and I'll try to stay sort of, coordinated around, using a couple of things like that. And I don't know that we found the perfect tool to do it, but I think that there's, but things like that sort of help you stay coordinated, especially with a larger team.
Good stuff. So, one of the things that struck me when you were on the stage with Mark is this coming together, right, of two guys that have two different roles and are responsible for two important elements that drive all the sales and revenue for HubSpot, right? Sales and marketing, right? So naturally, inbound marketing does a wonderful job of beating up the old school way of selling, cold calling, calling from lists and dialing for dollars and interrupting people and all the fun things. Yet there is a sales element. I thought it was really kind of a surreal experience for me to see you and Mark up there on stage saying how you two guys work together, right? And particularly with regards to product marketing. But What is your feeling on that? I mean, is it now getting more hip and cool for marketing to talk with sales, as you and Mark were up on the stage? Tell me about that tension and what your feeling is on that.
Well, definitely, if you've seen both of us, Mark is definitely the hip and cool one, not me. But I hope it's becoming more in fashion for marketers to talk more to their sales teams. I think that in marketing, you really are only effective in the CEO or the CFO's mindset if the things that you're doing are helping the company grow and drive revenue. And that really requires that you have a good relationship with your sales team, and you need to make sure that they're approaching all the different leads that you're generating in the right way and selling them effectively. And that requires a lot of communication. So yeah, I hope one of the things we were able to do with this session was to get more sales and marketing teams talking to each other to help make both of them be more effective, because I think what we're finding is that the more marketing shifts to the new realities of who the buyer is today and the power that the buyer has, the tools that the buyer uses, that then means you need to transform your marketing, you need more content, you need more context, you sort of have to have more inbound mindset, and that results in different types of leads being generated, which actually means those leads have different expectations, and that actually means that your sales team needs to change what they do to be as effective as possible, and that's, I think, a lot of what we're trying to get at.
The other thing to mention there, Mike, and this again relates to some of the conversations we were having with customers coming up to us, and almost 300 people that we met and shook hands with and have contact information and are reaching out to now regarding their content pain points, right? But one of the things to mention this is at WriterAccess, we've seen the content asset portfolio greatly increase in terms of the things people are buying in our platform, right? So 2 or 3 years ago it was more blog posts, articles, occasional white paper. We're seeing speeches rewritten, PowerPoints, workbooks, all kinds of new assets being purchased to most likely manage this incredible workflow of how you need to touch customers at different points in the chain with different marketing assets and content assets. And I think that's what we're beginning to see, don't you? And can you comment on that?
I think that a lot of that is true for sure. I think that sort of all of us are climbing that learning curve of inbound marketing and the types of different content and things like that. So yeah, I definitely see that happening.
Cool. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the segmentation of the customers and how that tied in with the different tracks of the show. I saw an interesting keynote that talked, I believe Brian and Darmesh, they were talking about how the company's organized. Actually, you know what? I think that was your presentation with Mark, how the company's organized and how you sort of divide people into small businesses and medium-sized businesses and then enterprise solutions, and you have both sales and marketing teams infused in those different segments, yet they're different audiences that you're talking to. Can you talk about that a little bit, both in terms of HubSpot and also in terms of customer needs? Rebecca gave a great presentation, by the way, on customer needs and dividing up your customer needs. Can you talk a little bit about the critical element of that segmentation of your customer pool?
Yeah, I think that what we try to do with the customers and the alignment of the company is that we try to organize the company around the customers. So we have customers that are small businesses, mid-sized businesses, large businesses, and we have sales, marketing, and services teams that work together, sitting in the same room, organized in the same way around those different customer segments. And I think that the one of the big changes that's happening is the customers have so much more power today than they used to have, and that really means that customer success is even more and more critical. So you need to think about sort of how you're thinking about the different portions of your customer base and making sure that you're trying to make everyone as successful as possible. And we treat customers differently based on what size of business they are, based on where they're located, and based on how successful they are with our platform. And there's certainly some folks that either because they're newer or run into some challenges or whatever that are struggling more, and they get one type of help and one type of content from us, and different for other segments. But it's one of those things that your goal really needs to be very high levels of customer success in order to be a viable business today, because customers have such a larger voice than they used to have.
Spot on. So how would you compare this product launch to, say, an Apple product launch? We're going to talk about your products in just a second here, but you you aiming high? What are your thoughts on
Yeah, I mean, we obviously aim as high as possible. I think that, obviously we're not at iPhone levels nor at Steve Jobs levels. But I think that from our perspective, it was definitely the biggest and best launch we've ever done. And I think there were aspects of it. There was a tweet or two of people sort of comparing it to things like Apple. Obviously, on the scale, it's very different because we're not a consumer product. But I think within the industry that we serve, I think it was good. And I give the team high marks. I think the team did a great job.
When will you have data back on the question number 3 here? Did it sell? What are you looking for with goals of people trying some of the new products, which we're going to talk about in a second?
Yeah, I think that our sales cycle usually runs on average around 60 days, so I think it's one of those where it's going to take at least a few months to really have any idea. The early indications look really good, and then to be honest, this is kind of this is the major stuff we're going to be selling, the major new stuff we're going to be selling over the course of the next year, so it's to some degree the sales is sort of a little bit more long-term. All the early indications look really good. We mentioned that free product for salespeople at getsignals.com, and that had, I don't want to reveal the exact number, but many, many thousands of users starting to use it, which is great. And then a lot of interest from customers in terms of exploring some of the new stuff that we launched and things like that. So I feel good about it, but you're right. I think it's going to take at least a couple months for some early numbers to flow in.
Cool. So tell us about Signals and how you're moving customers towards the, sort of this customer management concept inside the HubSpot platform versus just sort of using inbound as a website lead generation, concept. And that's a big deal, don't you think?
I think it's a huge deal, and I think for the first time ever, we've got a product that's for salespeople, and frankly also for people in customer service and customer-facing roles as well. And it's also an individual user product, which I think is interesting. And so, it's a plug into Chrome. It integrates with Gmail. It integrates with Outlook. And it basically gives you signals back from people about what they're doing, and it gives you, signals about who you should be calling and interacting with and when. And so I think it can be really powerful. And you're right, it's definitely a really, really big shift for us. But most of that shift came from what we were hearing from the marketers, which was like, okay, I'm doing a good job of inbound. I generated, X number of new inbound leads, but my sales team hasn't really figured out what they need to do differently with those leads versus the cold calling lists they used to use. And that sort of put this light bulb, went off in our heads saying, wow, actually what's interesting is the buyer has changed, and we were telling people that means marketing has changed, which is true, but it also means sales needs to change. It also needs to, customer support and service needs to change to some degree too. And what does that mean? And we said, well, maybe we need to build a tool to help those people better understand what signals the customers and prospects are sending to them, and that's basically where that product came from. So I think that it's something we're looking to sort of continue to build on, and I think it's our first, step in this direction. And I think it's going to be an exciting new direction for us to serve, help align sales and marketing and service within the company through new tools like this.
Exciting. Tell us about COS, COS. Do you have a code name or a nickname for this yet?
Just the COS.
What's the cost? What's the cost of COS? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's two exciting things about the new content platform that we launched, which is sort of like a content management system or CMS, but it's optimized it's both personalized to individual users and optimized based on what device people are using, and those are the two exciting things about it. So, mobile has grown as a percentage of traffic in the overall web, I think, to something like over 15-20%, I forget the exact number, but mobile is huge. And it's not just one format, it's all these different mobile devices between Apple and Android and different screen sizes in Android, tablets, you get the smaller 7-inch tablets, you get the 10-inch tablets, you have all these different devices, and what you want to be able to do as a marketer is have the right experience for the right person on the right device. And if someone's on your website today and they're a prospect when they're on a tablet, there's, you want to show them the content that's optimized for that. And, if it's a different person, if they're a customer and they're using a laptop, that's got to be a little bit different experience as well. But rather than creating like tons of different websites, the question is, can you, build it all once and sort of optimize it for everywhere? And that's the vision behind the COS and what it does. So that's, I think, very exciting. And I think it's one of those things where if you have the right content feeding that platform, it can be super effective, right? So I think what we're doing here is providing the shell, the framework for publishing and optimizing and personalizing this content, but then certainly, you or working with someone like WriterAccess needs to fill that shell up with the actual content, right?
And isn't that really the biggest pain point that you see with your customers that have purchased your software? They're loving it, they like it, they understand it, they've downloaded your ebooks, they've gone to your webinars, they get it, but it's like, where is all this great content going to come from? I mean, do you guys continue to hear that, and do your sales reps continue to hear that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the biggest challenge that anyone faces with doing inbound marketing in general is, it's you've gone from an era where you take budget and then you allocate it to agencies who buy ads for you, and to something where you're then taking that budget and either, trying to figure out how do you fill up all these different things that you're doing with content, either through internal hires or working with other folks like WriterAccess or or things like that. And so you're absolutely right that the how you do marketing has changed for sure, and you need to you're absolutely right. It's like that's one of the biggest challenges that people have, and there's just different ways to sort of meet that challenge, but you're absolutely right that that's sort of the big thing that changes in the world of inbound marketing, is that you've got to figure out what's the content that you're producing and who's producing it, and how are you going to continue to produce it on an ongoing basis.
A lot of CMS platforms out there. You think you can outmarket them?
I don't know. I don't think we can outmarket them, but I don't think that we need to. I don't think if someone's choosing between another CMS and the HubSpot COS, and they're literally just making the choice between those two things, then either they're not the right customer for us, or they're thinking about things in the wrong way, right? So, I think that the differentiation and sort of the reason why people choose HubSpot is because of the integration. And when you talk about, okay, well, if you have a site that's built on some other CMS, that site doesn't know. All those pages are static. It doesn't know who that person is. It doesn't know if they're a customer or they're a lead or they're a prospect or they're one of your biggest opportunities or they're from industry X or industry Y. But because HubSpot's system is based around your inbound database of contacts, it knows who all those people are, and that's tied into what content is being displayed to them. So just like you can personalize content and emails to different people, you can personalize website pages now to different people. And so one of the things we've done actually is within our blog articles, we actually sometimes have specialized content that just shows up if you're a customer, right? And different content that shows up if you're a prospect, or different offers that are sitting around that content that display differently based on who you are. So I think it helps make the content that you're publishing even more effective if you can personalize it to who the people are. And that's sort of the big difference there. If you just want to launch a static website, I actually think that probably if that's all you want to do, probably the HubSpot COS is not necessarily the right product for you. So I think there's a lot of differentiation there.
Great answer. Social inbox. Tell us a little bit about how it's going to help our inbound marketing efforts.
I love social inbox, and I'll tell you why. I'm big on social. I love social. I'm on Twitter all day long, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's great. But what I never really loved about it was, you're monitoring for some keyword or something, and then you have this whole stream of 200 people that said something about a topic. Well, who are they? And without clicking on each of their individual bios and looking at each individual one, it's like, who are they? And, I kind of want to prioritize my interactions based on who they are. And if someone is a lead or an opportunity, I want to treat them one way. If somebody's a customer, I want to treat them very differently. If someone is, neither of those things, there's probably a different way I want to treat them. And so that's what Social Inbox does. Just like the content optimization system takes the content management system and combines it with your inbound database of people, of contacts. Social Inbox does the same thing with social media. So you can actually monitor, and one of the things we do is we actually have like a list for each of our sales reps just to monitor their leads. And how cool is that each sales rep gets an email every single day of what their leads said in social media, and it automatically updates based on how their leads change, if they get new leads assigned to them or leads fall out of their funnel, they go away. And I just think that's really, really cool. So it's sort of a new take on social media to combine it with the contacts database and what you know about different people. And I think that's sort of the future of where a lot of marketing needs to go, is to be much more personalized and have a lot more context built around the relationships.
Spot on. So how was Brian's dog received at the show? A final question for you, really.
Romeo is great. He's doing a good job. He did a good job of not revealing anything in that session that we didn't want to reveal. So, yeah, Romeo is great. He spends a little time around the office, and he's doing a good job. I don't know that he loved the pressure and attention. I don't know if you saw in that session, this photo, he's walking around a little bit, but after a little bit of that, he sort of just kind of laid down quietly by Brian's feet and just kind of sat there. So maybe he was a little bit nervous. I don't know. I don't know if he's that familiar with the big crowds, but he was a hit. Everybody loves Romeo. He actually got a haircut for the show too. About 2 days before the show, he got a new haircut, so he's trying to get ready for it. He's got an orange collar, which matches well with the color scheme. So yeah, no, he's done a great job.
Well, we really appreciate you being on the show today. Any hints on being on the webinar today? It is a show. It feels like a show. It feels like a radio show. Back to my Life Tips radio shows. I've done like 300 episodes of those and asking good questions and making people smile. But back to Inbound 14. Well, what's up your sleeve? What are you thinking?
I don't know. I mean, you tell me what you think we should do. I mean, the first thing is we'll be at a bigger facility. So we'll be at the new Boston Convention Exhibition Center, the BCEC, in South Boston along the waterfront.
Awesome.
And they do shows of like up to 100,000 people. So we'll have a much larger venue and some interesting things that we can do there. But I don't know. I mean, people have sent me lists of bands that they want. There were two people on Twitter telling me we need to get the Black Keys, and somebody else saying something else. So I have no idea what we're going to do, but I can assure you that starting in another week or two, we're going to figure out how we can top last year. So we'll see. But you let me know if you have any special requests.
Thanks so much, Mike, for joining us today. I'm going to invite anybody to ask Mike some questions if they want, using the question formula on our little dashboard on the side over there. But what do you think would be the type of numbers you might expect next year? If you were to just take a wild guess, what would you target as far as attendees next year?
Oh, I hate playing this game. I think if you have to ask me right now, I think something in the 7,000 to 8,000 range. I just think based on the feedback we've gotten from the event and how many people really rated it so highly, that means a lot of them are going to come back and a lot of them are going to tell their friends to come. And I think that'll mean some amount of growth, but we'll see. I think we're going to have to do it again next year and just see how many people actually turn up. But I would say at this point I'm going to be conservative and sort of say in that kind of a range.
Here's a hint that I picked up on. I was speaking with a HubSpot customer that attended the show, fairly large company. He was a VP of marketing. Actually, I think a VP of content marketing, now I think about it. And he declared, "I am definitely bringing my CEO next year." And I thought that was interesting because of a couple things. One of the challenges, as you all know, is getting buy-in from your CEO, particularly with regards to content decisions or funding inbound marketing, funding content marketing, funding marketing in general. But I thought that was interesting and maybe something you could pick up on there. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a really good insight, Byron. I think that I've had a few people email me after the event asking for either the slides or videos of individual sessions, and they said that they wanted to share it with their CEO. And I think that comment that you just made is very much in that same vein of, okay, I went there, I get it, I learned a lot, it was a great show for me, but I want to use this event to help my CEO understand that this is the way the world is going and we need to do more of this stuff. And I think that's really interesting. I think, maybe what that means for us is maybe we should think about having some sort of a CEO track, or even maybe a special, in addition to that, where we can put all the CEOs in a room and really give them the specific content that they're going to need. So I think the keynotes are good for them, but then I think there might be a lot of the same content in the rest of the show, but maybe it's a little bit different for them. And then maybe we also need to have a special CEO ticket, like a companion ticket, like you get a ticket for yourself, but then if you can also bring your CEO, here's what they get to do. And it's probably like a one-day thing for them because you know how busy CEOs are. But maybe there's something special we should do for those folks. I think it's a really interesting idea.
On the opposite end of that idea, we heard a lot of chatter about, what is great content? How do you know it's great? How do you create it? What are the methodologies that you use? And can you show some examples? I mean, I got that a lot. People enjoyed my book. I was giving away, the content marketing guide, which has a lot of tips and tactics of content marketing that I've learned over the years. And that was a smash hit. People loved that. They were, everybody wanted the book and were saying, can I get another copy of the book for my this, that, and the other? But tactical stuff on content creation particularly, both at an enterprise level, and even at a one-up level, a lot of SMBs, there's a lot there and there's a lot to learn. And your thoughts on how to create sexy content in a boring industry, similar type of problem, how do you create great content and what are creative ideas on how to do that?
Yeah, I think that everyone wants to know about that topic, right? And you and I get asked that question a lot, and I think we have a whole bunch of answers to it, but you're absolutely right that that's kind of the type of thing that people want to know more about. I always, I think the simple answer to that is just telling people to start with their customers and what questions are your customers asking you, and then all those questions are great titles for blog posts. So, go to the people that interact with your customers the most, whether it's customer support or sales or yourself, and try to write down every time a customer asks you a question, because guess what? Every time they ask you a question, there's at least 10 other people that have the same question, but those people aren't asking you directly. They're typing it into Google, and that kind of content can be a great sort of set of things to develop for yourself.
The whole B2B channel is interesting. Riley just on that point of listen to what questions your customers are asking. So how important can content be? What role can content play in B2B marketing? New product introduction, developing new retail channels. Any comments or feedback on that for Riley?
Yeah, I think B2B is huge. And I think that what's interesting is a lot of these techniques, they work great for B2B and for B2C, but I even think in some ways they work better for B2B because it tends to be much more of a considered sales process. It tends to be something where people are doing a lot more searching, a lot more reference checking, a lot more research as part of the process. And the more content that you have about your brand, the more sort of inbound attraction you're doing online, the more successful you're going to be in that type of an environment. So what you want is when people are even, searching for things that are unrelated to your company or your brand, that they're still finding your content, right? And then it just gives them that reassurance through their whole sales process, through the whole research process, that you're the right choice for them. If you look at the alternative is where, maybe somebody in your sales team cold calls them and convinces them that your product's awesome, and then they'll go to Google and search around for a bunch of things, and they either find nothing or they find your competition's blog articles. That doesn't bode so well for you. So you want to really make sure you're getting found as many different places as possible, and I think that this is one of the best ways to do it. So I think it's huge for B2B.
Another interesting track that I'm asked a lot, I'm sure you are as well, is how do you choose your thought leadership position, right? We all kind of know we need a thought leadership position, i.e. we need to talk about something other than our brand and our products and our benefits and our features and our services. We need something that will, if you will, lure people or ignite people or engage people into something they can learn about. But that challenge of selecting a thought leadership topic is really hard. I think that would be a cool thing to talk about.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from knowing your customers and what are the major topics that are on their mind, and then just taking a stand and having an opinion. I think that a lot of people worry that by taking a stand on a piece of thought leadership that they worry so much about the people they'll alienate. and they don't think so much about the people that will energize and engage. And there are people that don't believe that, there's just somebody published an infographic actually that I just saw today that was, the downside of inbound marketing and like all these, it takes so much time, and, that's all these problems with it. And that's fine. I think that one of the things that a lot of people at the conference talked about was, if you're trying to make everyone happy, then you're going to delight no one. There's sort of that whole notion where, taking a stand and having an opinion, and sort of that's how you become remarkable. So I would just say that I think the big holdup people have on thought leadership is usually that they're unwilling to take a stand because they don't want to upset anyone. And I think the real opportunity is to find an issue where you can take a stand, and that will sort of energize a certain portion of people and get them really motivated to get behind you. If you're trying to make everyone happy, you're going to, really, sort of enlist or delight no one.
We're seeing a lot of influence on authorship and the personality of the authors that are publishing both on the web and in books. Tom Peters wrote a book that actually was never published. I got to know Tom a bit, and he gave me a beta copy of this book called Brand Me, which was really cool. It never published for some reason. It was awesome, but it talked about a lot of what he would speak about at conferences, and bringing in your personality and disrupting, if you will, the yes mode that we all have in corporations, and finding out who you are and letting that be the nucleus of how you promote yourself and your company through your own personal brand. Number one, cool topic for and a cool speaker for a keynote possibly, maybe a little retro. Tom is, of course, the master and, of many decades, and, I'm not sure he's centerpiece for this current decade, but what are your thoughts on that and personality, Mike? And, even seeing Romeo on the stage with Brian, I mean, will that become increasingly important, do you believe, for the success of bringing that personality into the content we're creating? Thoughts on that?
I think so. I think that people like to connect with people, and when you have content, I think people like to know what's the personality behind it. And I think some brands can do that from a brand perspective, but I think a lot of times it needs to be coming from an individual person. I also think that, just from a SEO perspective, right? So you've got Google Plus as author profiles, and, if you get that properly set up, then when people find your blog articles, they're seeing a little face of someone next to the search results, right? And that's not a brand, that's a face, that's a person. So I think there's a lot of things moving in the direction of a company's brand being a compilation of the brands of the people that sort of comprise that company. And so I think there's definitely a lot of movement in that direction, and that's sort of a non-traditional thing, but I think it allows people to have a better and a more human connection with the companies.
We've had some great thoughts. Somebody commented on how about HubSpot Hawaii for 2015, Inbound 15 Hawaii. Do you like it being, you like Inbound being in your backyard, Mike? Does that help the effort?
Yeah, I mean, Hawaii would be fantastic. I would love that. But I think for a lot of reasons, I mean, we're here in Boston. I think, to be honest, we've got a little bit of a chip on our shoulder within the technology industry of, kind of Boston versus maybe Silicon Valley and some other places. And, we're all Boston folks. Halligan's a big Red Sox fan. I think we're super psyched to have it here and keep that sort of event in Boston. There's a lot of, the older technology roots of the technology industry. We're here, and we're looking to kind of get back to those roots and sort of build that out. I think the other thing that's really interesting and a more practical reason to have it in Boston is that it enables a lot more of the HubSpot employees to participate. So if we had in Hawaii and had to buy a $600 or $800 ticket for every single person to fly out there and put them all up in hotels, we just wouldn't be able to bring as many people. And so I think that having it in Boston means that we can get all 600 employees actually to the event. They can meet customers, they can help people, they can talk to people. So I think it works really, really well from that perspective. So there's a couple of reasons why we want to have it here, and we've already had meetings with The governor has been to our office a couple times. We've had meetings with the executive director of the Boston Convention Center Authority about sort of the long-term growth for this event. So we're trying to work with the city of Boston to make this into something that's huge over time and becomes kind of one of the marquee events right here. So you're local too, so it's like kind of go local. So we're big fans of that.
And Go Local's another interesting topic, just on a side note. Is HubSpot doing anything to help customers, have success with inbound marketing locally? That's another interesting topic channel, perhaps, for next year's sessions.
Yeah, I think certainly we have lots of advice and content around those areas. I think there's definitely some people that do local stuff that definitely use HubSpot, but I'll be honest, we haven't developed a specific local marketing or location-based marketing tool set the way some other folks have. But I think in terms of content, you're absolutely right, and we can definitely add some sessions like that for next year. It'll be a good thing to talk about.
Good stuff. So, but HubSpot is certainly going global, and they're going local perhaps as we move forward.
There you go.
Well, Mike, again, so great to have you on today's webinar. So I want to thank you for your time and the excitement that you've shared with us about last year's show. Look at this, it was last week's show. But really, really great to have you on today.
Thanks a ton for having me. This is great, and thanks for your help and participation in the event.
Right on. Until next year, perhaps, when we do another session with Mike, you'll be off and busy. And one other question, anything crazy targeted for 2014 for HubSpot? Do you think any hints on products or anything you're looking at that you think will come together?
I guess what I would say is I think we just released all this new stuff. We've got a new product for salespeople. We've got a lot of other products, social inbox and the content optimization system to do a lot more with personalization. And so I think we've got a little bit of a new direction there. And I think what you'll see next year is continued steps in those directions. So I think more along those lines is what I would look for.
Terrific. Thanks again, Mike, for being in the loop today. And until next month, everyone, I hope your journey is a little smarter, better, faster, and wiser when it comes to content marketing. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next month.